Alright, let's look at some attributes of laser weapons, starting with fade range. Fade range is kind of like laser weaponry's effective range, except once you surpass the fade range, the bullet just disappears, or the laser, rather, just disappears entirely. Unlike physical weapons, where damage is greatly reduced outside of their effective range, outside of the fade range, it disappears. Additionally, something that's not noted in the stats is the power of a particular laser weapon's laser will vary based on how far away you are. Even if you're within the fade range, your damage will change drastically depending on the weapon. For some weapons, such as Immutable Sin, the damage is relatively level from its furthest range to its closest range. But for other weapons, this may be greatly different, with them doing massive damage up close and then next to no damage once they get towards their lower end. The Takemikazuchi is a little bit ironic because it has really long range for a laser rifle, but also terrible long range damage. So you can hit enemies from a long range with it, but it really wants to be up close to do max damage, losing more than half of its damage value once you get further out. Meanwhile, the Weiss Donner does not really care. You lose like 2 points of damage from its max range to its closest range. So as long as you're within its fade range, you're going to be doing relatively similar damage. It's very much a generalist weapon with no major perks, and that makes it reliable at all of its effective ranges. Now let's look at the Femto damage bonus. This is split into two separate stats that work together. So the Femto correction damage boost is dependent upon the lowest Femto correction amount percentage. So for this weapon in particular, it's got a 1.8 times Femto damage boost and a lowest Femto correction amount of 75. So what this means is, as long as you are above 75% of your max Femto, you're going to get an 80% damage boost, a 1.8 times damage boost. Now this damage boost is not reflective of the stats seen. It is calculated afterwards, so that 175 attribute damage is what you would get if it does not have its boost. It's not shown in the stat screen. Meanwhile, other weapons, such as the Weiss Donner, again, King Generalist of the laser weapons, has a very, very low correction damage boost, but also a very low correction amount. So as long as you're above 25% of your maximum Femto, you'll retain its 10% damage bonus. Then there is the Takemikazuchi, which sits comfortably in the middle with a 1.5 times bonus at 50% or higher maximum Femto. It's right in the middle. These vary by weapon type, and they're static. They can't be rolled for higher stats. You can't get like A rank damage bonus or anything like that. They're a static roll that will never change, and they're dependent only on the weapon type. So now we can see in action the Weiss Donner and the Immutable Sin both have pretty relatively similar damage output, and the Takemikazuchi, at least at this range and closer, outperforms the Weiss Donner. But if we drop our Femto below 75%, which is where Immutable Sin's correction amount comes in, suddenly its damage goes from 27-28 to 14-15. It takes a massive hit as long as it is below 75%. Once you go back above 75%, that damage will go back up to its optimal value. So where Immutable Sin was slightly outperforming Weiss Donner before, now Weiss Donner is outperforming it by quite a lot. As long as it has that Femto bonus, it'll do a little bit more damage. But as soon as it loses it, it does drastically less damage than the Weiss Donner can. Similarly, the Takamikazuchi greatly outdamages the Weiss Donner until you break below 50% Femto capacity, and then its damage drops notably to the point that it is now being outdamaged by the Weiss Donner. So the lower your Femto is, the worse certain weapons will perform, and the higher it is, the better they will. So depending on your build and playstyle, which type of weapon you want to go for will play a big part in your optimal damage output. If you don't really use skills like me, I don't typically use skills very often, so high Femto bonus weapons do great for me because I don't need to worry too much about losing that Femto bonus for most of the builds that I use. Whereas if you do use a lot of skills, such as Mirage or anything like that, you may want a more stable weapon that doesn't rely too much on the bonus. But there is an exception to that, and that is the propellant tanks. So the propellant tanks give you a second Femto bar, and as long as that Femto bar is intact, no matter how low the Femto bar goes, you'll still have your bonus. You can burn out this entire Femto bar, and it's not going to affect the damage output of Immutable Sin or Takamikazuchi at all, because it only calculates based on your base Femto before the propellant tank is calculated. So in this case, the Femto capacity nearly doubles the Femto propellant tank nearly doubles my total capacity, so I can burn through over 9,000 Femto before I'm finally affected by the Femto bonus correction penalty. This mechanic makes the propellant tanks an excellent option for players that want to maximize their laser damage output, but also still use skills occasionally. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and in my next one, I'm going to show you guys how to take out Insania Rex and bypass its annoying Nova mechanic.
Let's keep it up. Knock that sucker down.